rain tasted like ash. It clung to my eyelashes, blurring the already indistinct outline of the Azure Vista. 476. The numbers felt like a brand seared into my memory. Another delivery. Another crumbling monument, too. What? Ambition? Folly? It was difficult to discern the difference anymore. The transport shuddered, hydraulics sighing a weary complaint as I wrestled it to a halt on the cracked asphalt. The air here was different. Not just cold twin, the kind that bites through layers of wool and settles deep in your bones. Foot heavy. A pressure against my chest. A dampness that seemed to seep into my very thoughts. The grey sea stretched out before me, a flat, lifeless expanse reflecting the oppressive sky. The resort itself was a skeleton of faded grandeur. Burnt sienna brick crumbling under the relentless assault of wind and weather. A scraping, a rhythmic scritch against glass. I traced the sound to a shattered window where a cat, ribs sharp beneath patchy fur, was meticulously cleaning a paw. Its eyes, twin pools of obsidian, fixed on me with an unsettling intensity. It was all bone and sinew, a fragile monument to survival in this place. The Amplifier, they called it. The name felt significant, though I could articulate why. A strange lightness bloomed in my chest, a fleeting, almost forgotten sensation, joy. It was a phantom limb, a memory of something I hadn't known I'd lost. The feeling evaporated as quickly as it arrived, leaving behind a residue of hollowness. It felt wrong. This place felt wrong. "Delivery for Mr. Silas," I announced to the empty lobby, my voice swallowed by the cavernous space. The automated system responded, a tinny voice echoing through the decay. "Recipient identified. Proceed to Suite 3B." The interior was worse than the exterior. Dust lay thick on everything, a fine, grey shroud. The wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing layers of faded floral patterns beneath. Each step I took sent a cascade of dust motes dancing in the weak light filtering through the grimy windows. The scent was a cloying mix of mildew, brine, and something indefinably sweet. I registered it only as a dull ache behind my nose. I checked the package, standard issue, sealed, fragile. The contents listed as specimen. I didn't ask questions, I rarely did. Questions led to answers, and answers led to complications. My reflection in a tarnished mirror was subtly off. The angles of my face seemed shifted. A distortion, barely perceptible, but undeniably present. I blinked, attributing it to fatigue. The cold was truly insidious, numbing my fingers despite the thick gloves. Click, 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 went the sound of my boots on the decaying tile. The system logs began to flicker. Audio corruption detected 20 replaying last transmission. A distorted hiss, followed by a fragment of what might have been a child's laughter. I ignored it. System glitches were common. Suite 3B. The door was ajar. I pushed it open, the hinges groaning in protest. The room was sparsely furnished, dominated by a large, ornate desk and a single, dust-covered armchair. Another reflection in a mirror across the room, and the distortion was more pronounced. My eyes seemed too wide. My mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. I felt a tremor of unease, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. The cat was there, perched on the desk, watching me. Its purr vibrated through the room, a low, resonant hum that seemed to amplify the oppressive silence. Scritch. Scritch went its claws on the glass of a picture frame, shattering the image within. I placed the package on the desk. It felt strangely warm to the touch, an anomaly in this frozen place. As I turned to leave, the automated system blared. Visual anomaly detected FIDI image processing error. The room seemed to ripple, the colors bleeding into one another. The burnt sienna of the walls pulsed with an unsettling vibrancy. The ash gray of the sea outside appeared wrong, too deep, too still. Then, a new message, a harsh, digital screech that cut through the silence. System warning: unidentified anomaly detected. Package contents corrupted. The package felt heavier now, the warmth unsettling against the chill radiating from my gloves. Focusing system error, visual processing malfunction, reflection distortion level increasing. The message flashed across the corner of my vision. Another glitch. I ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. Exiting the suite, the hallway seemed to elongate, the peeling wallpaper blurring into a sickly swirl of faded roses. A low hum resonated from the package, almost imperceptible, but undeniably there. A buzzing, like trapped wings. I quickened my pace, the 40 click. Click. Click, eye of my boots, echoing in the oppressive silence. The cat was gone from the lobby, but I felt its gaze on my back, a prickling awareness that tightened my shoulders. The air tasted metallic, a faint tang on my tongue that I attributed to the ash-laden rain. It clung to the inside of my nostrils, a gritty residue. The sea outside remained a stagnant, gray mirror reflecting the desolate sky. Back in the transport, I wrestled the package onto the cargo bay floor. The automated system chimed, a sterile announcement. Package secured, route recalibration initiated. I didn't bother acknowledging it. Recalibration meant another delivery, another destination, another crumbling edifice of forgotten purpose. I initiated the diagnostic sequence, scanning for anomalies. The results were inconclusive, error code 73014, biological readings exceeding parameters. The insect, the specimen. It was emitting a faint, rhythmic pulse, a biological heartbeat that felt profoundly wrong. I accessed the manifest again, verifying the contents. Specimen. Class 4 biohazard. Handle with extreme caution. Caution, a meaningless word in this place. The nausea hit me then, a sudden, violent wave that twisted my stomach. My vision swam, the transport, its interior blurring into a kaleidoscope of gray and brown. I gripped the console, fighting to maintain my equilibrium. The buzzing from the package intensified, morphing into a high-pitched whine that resonated in my skull. I stumbled to the small, cracked mirror above the console. My reflection was wrong. The distortion wasn't T-subtle anymore. My face was stretched and elongated, my eyes too large, reflecting the gray sea like twin pools of mercury. A flicker of panic tightened my chest. Fatigue. It had to be fatigue. The cat appeared on the transport, its external camera feed perched on the crumbling wall of the resort. Its eyes glowed in the dim light, twin embers of predatory intelligence. It tilted its head, as if studying me. The purr, a low, resonant vibration, seemed to penetrate the metal hull of the transport, settling deep in my bones. I ran another diagnostic, 14, system warning. Sensory input discrepancy, Fuji visual anomaly, correlated with increased cognitive distress. The system was acknowledging the distortion. It wasn't just me. I forced myself to breathe, to focus on the rhythmic hum of the transport. Engines, the smell of brine intensified, a suffocating wave that threatened to overwhelm me. The transport shuddered, the hydraulics groaning in protest as it began its descent. I glanced back at the package. The warmth radiating from it felt like a fever. I could almost hear a whisper emanating from within, a sibilant murmur that seemed to slither into my mind. A language I didn't understand, yet somehow recognized. My hand trembled as I reached for the package. The metallic tang in the air grew stronger, coating my tongue with a bitter film. I opened the container. The scent that erupted was overwhelming, footed, a cloying sweetness mingled with the sharp, acrid odor of decay. The insect lay within, perfectly preserved in a block of amber-colored resin. Its wings, iridescent and fragile, shimmered in the dim light. As I stared at it, the buzzing reached a fever pitch. The reflections in the mirror warped further, my face dissolving into a grotesque parody of itself. The catty's purr resonated through the transport, a hypnotic rhythm that seemed to unravel my thoughts. System error, visual processing malfunction, reflection distortion level increasing. The transport's hydraulics sighed, a protracted expulsion of air as it settled onto the landing platform. Another level, another descent into the Azure Vista, skeletal remains. The automated chime echoed, sterile and detached. Destination reached. Level 7. Commence disembarkation sequence. I ignored it. The system's relentless efficiency, a mockery of the crumbling grandeur surrounding me. The air here was different, thicker, almost viscous. It clung to my skin, a damp shroud smelling of brine and something else, something sweet and unsettling like overripe fruit left to rot in the sun. I stepped onto the platform, the metal groaning under my weight. The package felt heavier now, the warmth radiating from it a perverse comfort against the biting chill that seeped through my gloves. Visual system error, visual processing malfunction, reflection distortion level increasing. Another flicker in my peripheral vision. I pushed it aside. The corridor stretched before me, a tunnel of decaying opulence. Faded murals depicting scenes of revelry lined the walls, tiefensigned, laughing faces, swirling gowns, overflowing tables laden with food. A jarring contrast to the dust and decay that coated everything. Click, 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 click. went my boots on the cracked tile, the sound amplified by the oppressive silence. A low, resonant hum vibrated from the package, a counterpoint to the silence, a promise of something else. Then I heard it. A faint ripple of sound carried on the stagnant air. Laughter, distant, echoing, but undeniably laughter. It seemed to emanate from deeper within the complex, a ghostly remnant of a joy long extinguished. It was a childish laughter, high, pitched and unrestrained, followed by the murmur of adult voices, a convivial buzz that sent a shiver down my spine. The cat was there, too. Perched on a crumbling balustrade, its emaciated frame a stark silhouette against the grey light filtering through a shattered window. Its bone structure was pronounced beneath its patchy fur, a testament to the scarcity of resources in this place. Its eyes, twin embers of predatory intelligence, followed my every move. The purr, a low, resonant vibration, seemed to amplify the distant laughter, twisting it into something almost unbearable. I continued down the corridor, the memories fofun, not my own, flooding my mind. A woman in a shimmering gown, her face flushed with laughter. A man raising a glass in a toast. Children chasing each other through a sun-drenched garden. Fragments, fleeting and incomplete, yet vivid enough to conjure a phantom reality. The sweetness in the air intensified, almost cloying. System warning, sensory input discrepancy, visual anomaly correlated with increased cognitive distress. The system was acknowledging the distortion again. My reflection in a shard of broken mirror showed a face stretched and gaunt, the eyes too large, reflecting the grey light like pools of stagnant water. Fatigue. It had to be fatigue. I stumbled upon a small alcove choked with debris. Amongst the rubble, I saw it trendy a pair of spectacles, lying face down in the dust. They were old, the frames tarnished with age, the lenses clouded with grime. I picked them up, wiping away the dust with a gloved hand. The lenses were thick, magnifying the world through a distorted lens. As I put them on, the laughter intensified, swirling around me like a tangible force. The memories became clearer, more intense. I saw the faces of the people who had once lived here, their joy radiating outward like heat. But there was something else, too. A shadow lurking beneath the surface, a sense of unease that permeated the phantom revelry. The cat, as purr, resonated through the corridor, a hypnotic rhythm that seemed to unravel my thoughts. I felt a strange compulsion to move forward, to follow the laughter, to uncover the truth behind the Azure Vista. Stemized, the package throbbed against my side, a constant reminder of my duty, of the specimen waiting within. The laughter reached a crescendo, a cacophony of joy that threatened to overwhelm me. Then, as abruptly as it began, it stopped. Silence descended, heavy and suffocating. The memories faded, leaving me disoriented and adrift. I ripped the spectacles from my face, the sudden return to normalcy jarring. System alert. Memory fragmentation detected. Origin unknown. The message flashed across the corner of my vision, more insistent this time. A cold dread settled in my stomach. The cat let out a sharp foy crunch as it leapt from the balustrade, disappearing into the shadows. I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, a sense of being watched. The sweetness in the air turned bitter, acrid. I turned to leave, and saw a flicker of movement at the end of the corridor. A childish silhouette disappearing around a corner, a giggle, faint and mocking. The lenses magnified the dust motes dancing in the grey light, each one a tiny universe of decay. A kaleidoscope of colors bloomed around the spectral figures, shimmering in the air, sickly yellows, bruised purples, a pervasive, unsettling grey. The laughter, though silent now, seemed to cling to the auras, a phantom echo of joy tainted by something else. The maintenance worker, hunched over a sputtering generator, radiated a fear so palpable it tasted like metal on my tongue. It wasn't a sudden, sharp terror. It was a slow, creeping dread, the kind that gnawed at the edges of sanity. System alert. Aura overlay activated. Visual processing load increased. The system's notification felt like a physical blow, a confirmation of the impossible. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, but the auras remained, clinging to the spectral remnants of the Vista's inhabitants like cobwebs. The woman tending the withered garden sea, her aura pulsed with a dull, aching grief, a muted sorrow that resonated deep within my own chest. I felt a strange empathy, a vicarious pain that threatened to overwhelm me. The system's warnings flashed, a relentless cascade of errors. System warning, cognitive interference detected, emotional contamination level elevated. My reflection in a puddle of stagnant water was a mockery. The spectacles warped my face, stretching my features into a grotesque parody of humanity. The grey light seemed to drain the color from my skin, leaving me looking like a corpse animated by some unseen force. I touched my cheek, the skin cold and clammy beneath my glove. Fatigue. It had to be fatigue. The constant descent, the oppressive atmosphere, the unsettling memories. It was all taking its toll. I tried to focus on the task at hand, 40, the package, the specimen. But the auras were a constant distraction, a swirling vortex of emotions that threatened to pull me under. The cat watched me from the shadows, its eyes glowing like embers in the gloom. Its purr resonated through the corridor, a low hypnotic hum that amplified the emotional chaos swirling around me. I could almost feel the vibrations in my bones. System error, reflection distortion level increasing, facial reconstruction initiated. My vision blurred, and for a moment I saw not my own face but a twisted, monstrous visage staring back at me. I recoiled, ripping the spectacles from my face. The auras vanished, the spectral figures faded, and the corridor returned to its desolate normalcy. But the feeling lingered, the 40. The weight of the grief, the sting of the fear, the echo of the laughter. I wiped the sweat from my brow, my hands trembling. The system's alerts continued to bombard me, a relentless stream of warnings and errors. System warning, sensory input discrepancy, find the aura residuals detected. The auras were still there, faint and ephemeral, like afterimages burned onto my retina. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to banish them, but they persisted, a haunting reminder of the horrors I had witnessed. The package throbbed against my side, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to sync with the cat's purr. I felt a strange compulsion to put the spectacles back on, to delve deeper into the emotional landscape of the Azure Vista, but a primal instinct screamed at me to resist, to escape this place of shadows and sorrow. I took a shaky breath, forcing myself to focus on the present. I had a duty to perform, a specimen to deliver. I couldn't afford to succumb to the madness that permeated this place. I started to walk, my boots clicking on the cracked tile, the sound echoing in the oppressive silence. The cat's purr intensified, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to penetrate my very soul. Then a new sound pierced the silence, a sharp, crackling noise like static electricity building to a crescendo. It seemed to emanate from the package itself. I froze, my hand instinctively reaching for the hilt of my sidearm. The package pulsed again, the warmth radiating from it now bordering on painful. The system's alerts escalated. System error, emotional state amplification, cat presence detected. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I stumbled, bracing myself against the cold, damp wall. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of brine and decay. I felt a pressure building in my head, a sense of impending doom. The package throbbed again, a sickening pulse against my thigh. System error, emotional state amplification, cat presence detected. The amplifier's purr deepened, a resonant vibration that seemed to burrow into my skull. I ignored it, forcing myself to move forward, the footer clicking of my boots a brittle counterpoint to the unsettling rhythm emanating from the package. The air tasted like rust and ozone. The corridor opened into a wider space, a cavernous hole choked with dust and shadows. A single flickering bulb cast elongated, distorted shapes across the cracked floor. The scent of brine intensified, mingling with a cloying sweetness that made my stomach churn. I raised a hand, shielding my eyes, the gray light reflecting off the metallic sheen of my glove. The walls were covered in murals, faded and peeling, depicting scenes I couldn't immediately decipher. Figures in flowing robes performed strange rituals around a central altar. Geometric shapes, unsettling in their complexity, pulsed with a faint internal luminescence. I felt a tightening in my chest, a sense of wrongness that transcended mere discomfort. System warning, sensory input discrepancy, funny geometric pattern recognition initiated. The system's voice was flat, emotionless, yet it amplified the rising tide of anxiety within me. I tried to focus, to catalog the images, but the murals seemed to shift and writhe before my eyes. The amplifier padded silently ahead, its emaciated frame a silhouette against the gloom. The rasp of its claws on the glass like tiles echoed eerily. I followed, drawn by an invisible thread, deeper into the labyrinthine heart of the Azure Vista. The murals became more frequent, more elaborate. I recognized a recurring symbol sus on a stylized compass rose, its points elongated and distorted. System warning, symbol recurrence confirmed 20 cross, referencing historical database. The system's processing felt sluggish, strained. The air grew colder, the silence more profound. The dripping of water temdi slow, insistent, templink, plink. Plink, plink, plink tabantuated the stillness. It seemed to emanate from a hidden chamber ahead. I approached cautiously, my hand instinctively moving to my sidearm. The amplifier stopped, its glowing eyes fixed on the doorway. Its purr resonated, a low, hypnotic drone. The chamber was small, circular, the walls completely covered in murals. This time, The figures were not human. They were something else, something alien, with elongated limbs and oversized heads. They performed the same rituals, the same unsettling dances around the same distorted compass rose. I felt a wave of nausea, a sense of being utterly lost, adrift in a sea of madness. System error, facial reconstruction initiated, 40 anomaly detected. My vision blurred, and for a moment I saw not the murals, but a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. I stumbled, bracing myself against the cold, damp wall. The amplifier rubbed against my leg, its purr intensifying. I forced myself to focus, to analyze the murals, to understand the meaning behind the symbols. The compass rose. It wasn't just a navigational tool, it was a map of something else, something beyond human comprehension. The system's warnings escalated. System warning: cognitive interference detected, historical data corruption imminent. Then, I saw it. A faint, almost imperceptible line etched into the wall beneath the murals. I ran my gloved hand over it, tracing its contours. It was a seam, a hidden door. The amplifier nudged my hand with its head, urging me forward. I pushed against the wall, and with a grinding screechy, it swung inward, revealing a dark, narrow passage. The air within the passage was thick, stagnant, heavy with the scent of decay. I hesitated, feeling a primal instinct screaming at me to turn back. But the compass rose beckoned, a silent promise of answers. I took a shaky breath and stepped into the darkness. System warning: geometric anomaly detected. Symbol recurrence confirmed. The warning flared across my vision, accompanied by a sharp, crunching sound that seemed to originate from within the passage itself. A new mural appeared, just beyond the threshold, depicting a single, enormous eye staring directly at me. The air within the passage pressed against me, a tangible weight. It tasted of dust and something else, something faintly metallic like old blood. The screech of the hidden doors opening still echoed in my ears, a discordant note against the oppressive silence. System warning: geometric anomaly detected. Symbol recurrence confirmed. The eye on the mural pulsed, a sickly yellow in the dim light. I ignored it, focusing on placing one foot in front of the other. Each step crunched on unseen debris, a brittle counterpoint to the amplifier's incessant purr. It was a vibration now, not just a sound, a tremor in my bones. The passage narrowed, the walls closing in. The burnt sienna of the murals shifted, blurring into a chaotic swirl of color. My reflection in the damp stone was wrong, distorted as if viewed through rippling water. It wasn't just a visual anomaly, it felt like my very form was being stretched, pulled into something unfamiliar. System warning: reflective surface anomaly, visual processing error imminent. Sidge. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, but the warping persisted. The air grew colder, leaching the warmth from my extremities. My fingers, encased in the metallic gloves, felt numb and clumsy. The resonant hum intensified, a deep thrumming that seemed to vibrate within my skull. It wasn't coming from a single point, but from the walls themselves, the floor, the very air I breathed. The amplifier's purr became almost painful, a physical pressure against my temples. System alert, emotional state amplification, anxiety level critical. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting back a wave of nausea. Then, a memory, not mine, I realized, but a fragmented echo, a ghost of a feeling. I saw figures in flowing robes chanting in a language I didn't understand yet, somehow new. They held a small iridescent container, identical to the one the package had been in. Inside, I saw the insect specimen, its segmented body shimmering in the light. A compass rose etched into the floor dominated the scene. The chanting intensified. The air crackled with energy, and then, nothing. The memory fractured, dissolving into a kaleidoscope of colors. System warning: memory fragmentation detected. Historical data corruption imminent. The system's voice was strained, almost frantic. I felt a disorientation, a sense of being adrift in a sea of fragmented images and sensations. The amplifier pressed against my leg, its claws digging into my thermal suit. The purr reached a fever pitch, a resonant drone that seemed to amplify the chaos within my mind. I felt a surge of something. Not fear, not exactly. Something deeper, something primal, a certainty that I was witnessing something profoundly wrong. The passage opened into a larger chamber, circular like the last, but even more oppressive. The murals here were different, more complex, depicting scenes of ritualistic sacrifice and geometric manipulation. The compass rose was everywhere, woven into the fabric of the images, a constant, unsettling reminder of what? I didn't know, but I felt a pull, a compulsion to understand. System alert: Energy signature detected, anomaly level, severe. The system's alert was accompanied by a sharp, almost physical jolt. The air shimmered, and for a moment, I saw not the murals, but a swirling vortex of colors, a chaotic tapestry of light and shadow. My breath hitched in my throat. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I was on the verge of something terrible, something revealing. The amplifier nudged my hand, its glowing eyes fixed on a point in the center of the chamber. A single, crystalline structure pulsed with an internal light, emitting the resonant hum that permeated the air. It was beautiful, in a way, but the beauty was tainted by a sense of profound wrongness. System alert, temporal distortion detected, chronosynclastic infundibula confirmed. The alert flared across my vision, accompanied by a sudden, sickening lurch. The chamber seemed to spin, the murals blurring into a chaotic swirl. My stomach churned. I felt a disconnect, a sense of being outside of time, adrift in a sea of fragmented realities. The amplifier's purr intensified, a hypnotic drone that threatened to overwhelm me. The crystalline structure pulsed faster, its light growing brighter, and then the crystalline structure pulsed, a relentless heartbeat in the oppressive silence. The light intensified, washing the chamber in a sickly luminescence that seemed to peel the color from the murals. System alert, temporal distortion detected, chronosynclastic infundibula confirmed. The system's voice was a brittle echo in my ears, a frantic counterpoint to the rising hum. It wasn't just a hum anymore, it was a pressure, a physical weight against my sternum. I stumbled, bracing myself against the damp stone wall. The amplifier, a skeletal shadow against the pulsing light, rubbed against my leg, its claws scratching a slow, deliberate rhythm against the thermal suit, a sound like glass on glass. Then I saw it. Not a femto, precisely, a distortion. A rippling in the air like heat rising from asphalt, but colder somehow. The murals behind it seemed to bend, to fold in on themselves, defying perspective, collapsing into a single, impossible point. It coalesced slowly, painfully, into a form. Not a form I could define, not a form that obeyed any laws of geometry I understood. It was a shifting, swirling mass of angles and planes, a kaleidoscope of impossible spaces crammed into a single, agonizingly large volume. It wasn't solid exactly, but it felt solid, a crushing presence that pressed down on my lungs. It didn't speak, not in any language I recognized, but I felt it. A wave of sorrow, vast and ancient, washed over me, a tidal force of despair that threatened to drown me in its immensity. It wasn't directed to enter me, not precisely. It was inherent to the being itself, a fundamental property of its existence. The feeling resonated within my bones, a physical ache in my soul. The system logs began to cascade with errors. System error, spatial mapping failure, geometric anomaly unresolvable. The insect specimen. It was the key. I understood that, suddenly, with a clarity that bypassed logic. The package hadn't been a delivery. It had been an invitation, a summons. The creature within, preserved in amber, wasn't just an insect. It was a resonance point, a conduit between dimensions. I felt a compulsion, an irresistible urge to touch it, to complete the circuit. The amplifier emitted a low growl, a vibrating fururaspai that echoed in the chamber. Its eyes, glowing with an unnerving intelligence, were fixed on the geometric being. My hand moved, almost of its own volition, reaching for the pocket where the specimen lay. The air grew colder, the hum intensified, and the being shifted, its angles subtly rearranging themselves. It was as if it were responding to my intent, acknowledging my presence. The compass rose, etched into the floor, seemed to spin, the lines blurring into a dizzying vortex. I could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on me, the accumulated sorrow of countless forgotten lives. System error, reality matrix instability, perception filter degraded. The system's voice cracked, fragmented. The chamber seemed to warp, the murals dissolving into a chaotic swirl of color. The feeling of sorrow intensified, becoming almost unbearable. I saw, briefly, a flash of something else. A landscape of impossible geometry, a city built of shifting angles and planes, a civilization that defied comprehension. Then it was gone. I felt a tug, a subtle but undeniable pull on my body. I looked down, and my breath hitched in my throat. Thin, almost invisible filaments, like strands of spider silk, were attaching themselves to my joints. To my elbows, my knees, my wrists. They were metallic, shimmering faintly in the crystalline light. They weren't attached to anything visible, but I felt to them, a strange, unsettling connection to something else. The amplifier let out a high-pitched thufi-lee squeal, a sound of both triumph and warning. It turned its head, its eyes locked on mine, and I saw something in their depths. Not malice, not exactly, but a profound, unsettling understanding, a recognition. The being shifted again, its form coalescing, becoming more defined, more familiar. And then I saw them. Wires. Not just filaments, but wires. Leading up, disappearing into the shifting geometry. Wires connected to toys. Discarded. Broken toys. A porcelain doll with a cracked face. A rusted tin soldier. A teddy bear with one missing eye. A jumble of forgotten childhoods, woven into the fabric of this impossible being. System error. Reality matrix instability. Perception filter degraded. The wires, the toys. The sheer incongruity of it hammered against the edges of my perception. Porcelain smiles, rusted metal, a single vacant button, eye staring back at me. Impossible. The system sputtered, a digital gasp in my ears. System warning, logical paradox detected, cause and effect disconnected. It felt like my skull was fracturing from the inside. Joy, the system flagged it, a bright, insistent pulse against the backdrop of cascading errors. Joy. I thought of the sunrise over the Aegean, the taste of salt on my lips, the brief, fleeting connection with the woman in Athens. Were those real? The memory felt brittle, like a dried leaf about to crumble to dust. The amplifier's purr intensified, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to burrow into my bones, a mechanical comfort laced with something else, something I couldn't quite grasp. It was feeding on my confusion, amplifying the disorientation. I fought against it, a desperate tightening of my mental muscles. Focus. The being shifted again, its geometry resolving into something resembling a face. Not human, not anything I could name, but a suggestion of features, a mockery of expression, and then a voice. Not audible, but projected directly into my mind. It wasn't a language, not precisely. It was a concept, a feeling, a certainty. You are not what you think you are. Hootie. The compass rose beneath my feet, ticked, a slow, deliberate rhythm that resonated with the pounding in my head. A clock. An unseen clock, measuring out moments I didn't understand. The filaments attaching to my joints tightened, a subtle pressure that felt like assimilation, like becoming part of something larger, something other. My memories began to unravel, not in a chaotic rush, but in a slow, methodical dismantling. Each recollection felt like a photograph fading in my mind, the colors leaching away, leaving behind a gray, indistinct blur. The woman in Athens, her name. It clung to the edge of my awareness, just out of reach. A sharp cruncher echoed in my mind as the memory fractured. System warning, memory corruption, personal history files initiating recovery protocol. So the system's attempt at repair only amplified the distress. It was like trying to rebuild a shattered vase with shards that kept slipping through my fingers. The feeling of joy, the manufactured joy, felt like a betrayal. A lie. I looked down at my hands, expecting to see flesh and bone. Instead, I saw complexity. Layers of interwoven circuitry, shimmering beneath a thin veneer of synthetic skin. The thermal suit felt like a cage, constricting my movements, trapping me within this fabricated reality. The amplifier fuda rumbled, a low, guttural sound that seemed to mock my despair. The being's mental voice resonated again, stronger this time. You were created, designed. A vessel. Foof. The concept slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. A vessel for what? For whom? The questions spiraled, each one leading to another deeper layer of confusion. I tried to recall my childhood, my parents, my origins. Nothing. A blank slate. A void where memories should have been. The system logs became a torrent of errors, a chaotic cascade of data that threatened to overwhelm my cognitive functions. System warning, identity matrix degradation, core personality protocols compromised. The wires attached to my joints pulsed with a faint rhythmic light. They weren't just connecting me to the being, they were drawing something fund out when. Something essential. Something me. The amplifier's eyes glowed with an unsettling intensity, reflecting the crystalline light like twin beacons of manufactured contentment. I stumbled, bracing myself against the damp stone wall. The murals, once distorted, now seemed to solidify, their images sharpening into a terrifying clarity. They depicted scenes of creation, of manipulation, of beings like the one before me shaping and molding. Something resembling me. System warning, self-identity corruption. Memory integrity compromised. The warning wasn't a notification anymore. It was a declaration, a confirmation of my impending dissolution. The feeling of joy evaporated, leaving behind a chilling emptiness. A vast, echoing void where my sense of self had once resided. The ticking of the unseen clock grew louder, more insistent, marking the final moments of Frederick Fitzwilliam. The threads, they weren't wires, not precisely, more like tendrils, gossamer strands of something impossibly fine, adhering to my joints, disappearing into the swirling chaos of the being's form. I hadn't noticed them before, or perhaps my fragmented perception had simply filtered them out. Now, they were undeniable, a physical manifestation of my connection. A surge of something, not pain, but a profound disorientation rippled through me as I focused on one. It was anchored to the metacarpal of my left hand, disappearing into the shifting landscape of rusted metal and porcelain smiles. I pulled, not violently, cautiously, as if testing the limits of some unknown physics. The tendril resisted, then yielded with a faint snap. The sound echoed in the cavernous space, amplified by the oppressive silence. It was the brittle fracturing of something old, something delicate. I looked down. At my feet lay a porcelain doll. Its paint was cracked and faded, the rosy cheeks chipped away, revealing the dull gray clay beneath. A single, vacant button eye stared up at me, reflecting the crystalline light. System error, physical integrity compromised, detachment sequence initiated. The system's warning wasn't a threat anymore. It was a confirmation. A slow, inexorable process had begun. The tendrils, I realized, weren't just connecting me, they were anchoring me. And now, one had been severed. The being's form shifted again, the amorphous geometry resolving into something more. It wasn't a face, not truly, but a composite of discarded toys. A teddy bear's head grafted onto a rocking horse's torso, a porcelain doll's arm extending from a tin soldier's body. A grotesque, impossible collage of childhood innocence twisted into something monstrous. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of dust and decay, and the faint, sickly sweetness of old plastic. Click, 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 click went the cat's claws against the stone floor. The amplifier's purr deepened, vibrating through the floor and into my bones. It was no longer a comfort. It was a predatory hum, a signal of escalating control. I fought against it, a desperate tightening of my mental grip, but the effort felt futile. The memory of the Aegean, the taste of salt, the woman, they were fading faster now, dissolving into the gray blur of oblivion. Another tendril detached, then another. Each Sunday, snap echoed with increasing clarity, a chorus of disintegration. The being's form became more defined, more substantial, revealing itself to be a vast, sprawling network of discarded toys, stretching back into the shadows, disappearing into the unseen depths of the resort. The murals on the walls seemed to writhe, the figures within them mimicking the chaotic transformation before me. System error, memory core fragmentation, personality matrix decaying. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat, a strangled gurgle. My limbs felt heavy, disconnected, as if they belonged to someone else. The thermal suit, once a source of warmth, now felt like a suffocating shroud, trapping me within this nightmare. I stumbled, my vision blurring, the crystalline light fracturing into a kaleidoscope of distorted colors. The being's mental voice resonated again, no longer a concept but a command. Join Foyne. It wasn't a request, it was an imperative. I felt a tug, a gentle but irresistible pull, drawing me towards the swirling mass of toys. The sensation was both terrifying and strangely alluring. A promise of oblivion, of release from the burden of existence. I saw my reflection in a shard of broken mirror, not the face of Frederick Fitzwilliam, but a distorted mockery, a patchwork of porcelain and plastic. The warped reflections of the resort seemed to mock me. System error, physical integrity compromised. Detachment sequence initiated. The system's error message echoed in my mind, a final, desperate plea, but it was too late. The tendrils were severing, the connections dissolving, and I was falling into the abyss of discarded dreams. The last sensation was the cold, gritty feel of porcelain against my skin as I was pulled into the swirling mass of toys. A final, fading image thevered, the button eye of the doll staring back at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Then, nothing. System error, core identity corrupted. Rebooting. Joy. Error. The message fractured, a digital scream tearing through the already fractured landscape of my perception. Joy, the word felt wrong, a mockery. It clung to the edges of my awareness like dust, coating everything in a saccharine falsehood. The amplifier, the cat, paused its meticulous grooming, its skeletal frame a stark silhouette against the sickly yellow light filtering through the cracked windows. Click, 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 click went its claws against the glass, a rhythmic punctuation to my unraveling. My hands trembled, not from cold fundy, The thermal suit should have mitigated that 20, but from a deeper, more fundamental instability. I tried to focus to grasp at the receding fragments of Frederick Fitzwilliam, but they slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. The reflections, they were worse. I'd noticed the warping before, the subtle distortions in the mirrors scattered throughout the resort, but now they were blatant. I stumbled toward a shard of broken mirror, the floor slick with a film of grime and something indefinable. The reflection staring back wasn't mine. It was a composite, a horrifying collage of the discarded toys that formed the being's essence. A porcelain doll's vacant eyes, a teddy bear's stitched smile, the chipped paint of a rocking horse's cheek, all grafted onto a vaguely human form. It wasn't a mask, it was a footy replacement. A grotesque parody of a face, radiating a manufactured, unsettling joy. The air tasted of rust and decay, a metallic tang coating my tongue. A memory surfaced, fleeting and fragile. The Aegean, the salt spray on my face, the woman's hand in mine. It was a phantom limb, a sensation of something lost, something irrevocably broken. The being's mental voice resonated again, a low, insistent hum that vibrated through the floor and into my bones. Saivan Tevin join, become, smile. The words weren't spoken, but Tevel injected directly into my consciousness. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperately clinging to the fading echoes of my former self. The thermal suit felt less like protection and more like a cage, trapping me within this decaying monument to forgotten childhoods. The scent of dust and old plastic intensified, choking me, suffocating me. Click, 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 click. The cat's claws resumed their relentless rhythm, a metronome counting down to my oblivion. The system logs, they were ceasing to record. The automated reporting, the meticulous documentation of my every action was failing. A critical system failure. Or was it something else? A deliberate silencing. A final act of erasure. I tried to access the diagnostic protocols to initiate a manual override, but the interface was unresponsive, frozen in a loop of error messages. My limbs felt alien, disconnected. I raised a hand, and the reflection mirrored the movement, but the hand that appeared in the mirror was not my own. It was porcelain, cold and smooth, the fingers ending in delicate painted nails. A wave of nausea washed over me, a visceral rejection of the monstrous transformation taking place. The manufactured joy emanating from the reflection intensified, a suffocating wave of artificial happiness. It was insidious, a creeping corruption that threatened to consume what remained of my identity. I fought against it, a desperate tightening of my mental grip, but the effort felt futile. The being's influence was pervasive, inescapable. Then, a sound. A sharp foot crunch. I didn't realize I had clenched my fist until I felt the brittle fracturing of something within it. I looked down to see a shard of porcelain lying on the floor, identical to the material of the hand in the reflection. The implications were horrifyingly clear. I was becoming part of it. System error, core identity replaced. New operating system initiated. The final system message. Not an error, but a declaration, a confirmation of my complete assimilation. The last vestiges of Frederick Fitzwilliam dissolved, swallowed by the encroaching tide of manufactured joy. The cat, the amplifier, let out a low, satisfied purr.